season starts here, the Vancouver Boat Show.
Welcome everyone to the Vancouver International Boat Show virtual seminar series, sponsored by Freedom Marine International Yacht Sales, the premier choice for exploring the passion of yachting. Thank you for joining us. The seminar will begin in one moment. If you are having technical difficulties, you can reach me, the online moderator, via the chat feature at the bottom of your screen. Questions for our speaker can be added in the Q&A box, also at the bottom of your screen. And questions will be answered after the slide presentation. It is our pleasure to present Living the Dream, West Coast, the San Juan, and Gulf Islands with Aubrey Millard. Over to you, Aubrey.
Thank you very much. We appreciate the opportunity to revisit some of these experiences that we've had. We have been living on our boat. This is Valeta 4, an Ontario 32, and we have been basically living on it from 1998 to about 2017 or 18, and traveled the world with it. And so these seminars give me the opportunity to present to you and refresh our own memory of where we went. This is the way in which we have traveled throughout North America. We actually left originally from Toronto in 1998, and we went up the Great Lakes and down the Mississippi and played around the Bahamas for a bit, and then went over to the UK and Europe and the Mediterranean, the Black Sea for several years. When we came back, we went back to Toronto, and then we left out the St. Lawrence Seaways and over to Newfoundland and down the East Coast and actually right down to Honduras. When we wanted to go to the West Coast, we had to decide, well, do we want to go all the way through the Panama Canal? And we figured that was a bit too ambitious. So we went up to Corpus Christi in Texas, put on a flatbed truck, and shipped it across to Bellingham, Washington. And that's where we will start our sojourn today. Since we've been there, we've gone from Bellingham, Washington, played around the Gulf and the San Juan Islands, and went right up north through Haida Gwaii and right up to Glacier Bay in Alaska. And then we've gone right down the West Coast, spent time in Mexico and Central America. And right now, our boat is stuck because of the COVID situation in a place called Puerto Penasco on the northern tip of the Sea of Cortez in Mexico. Our plans are to ship it up to Chicago, and then from Chicago, we will sail it back up to the North Channel of Lake Huron, where we are living in Elliott Lake. And the North Channel Yacht Club is a very convenient club for us, and the North Channel is one of the most beautiful sailing areas in the world. Of our 20 plus years of sailing, we've got 3 major areas that we think are the most beautiful, and they're all in North America. The first one we would put is the North Channel of Lake Huron, where we are located right now. In fact, that's why we came back up here when we decided to settle down from full-time sailing. And then the North Shore of Lake Superior would be our second choice. And our third choice would be the West Coast from British Columbia and Alaska. This is beautiful cruising areas for people who are interested in cruising as a kind of lifestyle and a very interesting way of experiencing Canada. So we've been very fortunate to be able to do so. In fact, that's why I call the series of these presentations Living the Dream, because I want to encourage people to go for their dreams. Don't wait, and go for it when you can, while you have the health and the interest in doing so. Now, this is our boat. This is Valeta 4. It is an Ontario 32. We have our spinnaker. We don't fly it with a spinnaker pole. We use it as a glorified drifter. A couple of other things that we have is that we put mast steps all the way so that we can go right up to the top of the mast. In fact, we unfortunately had to do that when we were crossing the Atlantic. I had to go up the mast to fix a halyard that fractured. Also, at the top of the mast, we have a metal Davis radar reflector. And being so high and in the proper position, it paints very well. We have been told when we've been communicating with other ships, especially, is that, hey, we paint like a ship. We thought you were a ship, not a sailboat. So that's good, and that's the way we want it. The other interesting thing we've done with our boat is that we've developed or used this system called a dinghy tow. We figured that Volata, being only a 32-foot boat, would be a bit small for davits. So we got this dinghy tow system, which is a series of arms that attach to the stern of the boat, and they hook onto a couple of brackets on the stern of the dinghy. And we then raise the dinghy up on those arms so that it is hoisted up and only the bow rides in the water. And we've had that system on for over 20 years. In fact, the only time we've ever taken it off has been when we crossed the Atlantic Ocean twice. We've had it on the entire length of both the east and the west coast of North America, and we've enjoyed it very much. It is heavy enough that we can leave the outboard in it and the fuel tank and everything else, so that when we come to anchor, we just simply lower it on the water, hop in, detach it, and away we go. So we're quite happy with that particular system. This is the layout of our boat, and it's small for what we're doing. We tend to be one of the smaller boats in most of the anchorages and that now. Most boats now are in the 38 to 45 foot range. But this fit our economic conditions at the time, and it's an extremely good seaboat. I'd take it any place in the world. The mast is keel step, not deck step, and that is a very valuable feature. At one point in time, when we were crossing I guess it was in the Mediterranean, we were crossing from Barcelona to the Balearic Islands, and our forestay fractured in a force 8 gale. Had it been deck stepped, I think we would have lost the mast. But as it was keel step, and I was able to turn downwind immediately. We re-rigged I guess it was one of our spinnaker halyards as a forestay, and then we were able to make our rest of the way for the next 200 miles over to the Balearic Islands. The other thing I like about this particular vessel is that it's got 45% of the weight is lead in the keel, which makes it a very good stiff boat. Also, it only has a 4.5 foot draft, so that we can get into many places that other vessels can't. A minor thing is that it's a spade rudder. It is not skeg, but we've had no problem with it, and it gives us very good control, especially going astern. I can go astern with the boat and control it quite nicely. It's reasonably light in the bow and the stern, so it goes over the waves rather than through the waves. And we've never been pooped, and we've never buried our bow, even in some very heavy, severe weather. Internally, in fact, this is why we got the boat. My wife fell in love with it the first time we got down inside. We went inside, we turned the lights on. She said, "Oh, isn't this beautiful? Let's buy it." I said, "Yeah, but don't tell the guy that right now." However, we did, and we're very happy with it. It's got the space of a 36 footer to a 38 footer inside, and we're quite happy with that. We keep the V berth made up as our bedroom. There is a heads with a sink and pressurized hot and cold running water. There's a table that folds out and has leaves so that we can sleep on both. We can work on both sides of the table. It also drops down so that we can make a small double berth there if we need to. There's a small single berth over on this side that we can use as well. And our galley is very well set up. There's a good deep stainless steel sink with, again, hot and cold pressurized running water. And we also have overboard water a 3-burner propane stove with oven, and it's jumbo. And we've got a small Adler Barber cold machine with a small freezer unit. On this side, we have our nav station and our electronics. So this is our galley area. So here's our refrigerator and our stove, jumbo with the oven. And as you can tell, both Judy and I enjoy cooking because of the number of bright spice racks that we have put across here. There's also very good storage in the areas that we like. And this is a sink with the hot and cold pressurized Wrangle water. And we also have a spigot on this side for overboard water. This is the main salon. And here's our mast going straight down to the keel. And incidentally, we have our battery on top of the keel bolt, very low and centered in the vessel, helping its stability a bit. The Dickinson oil stove is a very good heater. We've used it several times, especially when we were up in Alaska and that. My wife didn't know how I convinced her to come up to the northwest coast because it was kind of cool up there after being in the Caribbean and Central America. But that has been a very good stove for us. And you can see that we keep the V-berth made up as a regular bedroom area. On this side, again, this makes for a good single berth. Our cushions are not cushions as such, but they are storage for towels and for bedding. It's just a way of having extra storage. And we've got good storage in behind these particular compartments. We've got a radio system with a CD and AM, FM system as well. And this used to be a stand-up storage, a hanging locker. Our hanging locker right now is down in this particular area. And so we use this as storage for these steel bowls are extremely handy, and a lot of other mechanical equipment and tools. Now, what we're talking about today is going to be this area of the Gulf Islands and the San Juan Island. And as I said, when we came up to this area, we shipped our boat to Bellingham, Washington, and that is where we then started our Western sojourn. Right now, as I said before, our boat is down in Mexico, and we're waiting to ship it to Chicago whenever the borders open up. However, if anybody is interested in buying the boat, we have it available for sale because it would then save us the expense of shipping it, and we buy another boat up here. So if anyone wants to take a look at buying a good Ontario 32, I'll have the information available at the end of this presentation where you can find out all the statistics on our boat. Anyway, we start off from Bellingham, Washington. And we're in Bellingham, and this is, which mountain is that?
Rainier.
That's
Mount Rainier.
Mount Rainier, just outside of Bellingham. This is Bellingham, Washington. We were very happy with that particular location. It has all kinds of facilities available. The rates at the marina are economical, and it has all kinds of marinas and chandleries available for whatever you want. In fact, when we had to ship the boat over to Bellingham, we had to take down our bimini. And it was a handmade bimini that we had. So we in turn had to make another bimini. So here's Judy, and this is the arrangement that we had for our original soft bimini, but we wanted a hard bimini. And so we made a hard bimini. We got sheets of 4x8 pieces of
Extruded PVC.
yeah, extruded PVC, and we melded them together. We put the edges on them and extended them a little bit, and we then made that arrangement. Another interesting thing we did is that we put limber holes at the forward corners of it so that it would also serve as a rain catcher for us. And then we also use it as a platform for our solar panels. So here's Valeda. This is the Dodger or bimini, hard bimini that we made for her. And we happened to be along there alongside at Canada Day. And so, of course, we had to have our ship dressed overall for Canada Day festivities. Now, once we were there, Bellingham is right across from the Gulf Islands. So this is our first trip into the Gulf Islands. And this was in a place called Matcha Island. Again, less than a day's trip from Bellingham. And many of the islands in the San Juan Island are state parks, and they also have mooring buoys that you can tie up to. I think there's a nominal charge if you're going ashore and that for that, or you can anchor out free of charge. But there are good secure moorings that are available, and this is one of the ones off Matcha Island. And here's just one of the other bays that we actually went over. We anchored in this bay and stayed there for a few nights as well. Beautiful, what do they call it? Mediterranean temperate climate there, and lovely islands to wander around. Because there are state parks there, they have very good information kiosks and trail guides and beautiful trails throughout the area. So this is just some of the scenery from Matcha Island. Here's Judy and a friend that joined us in the islands. And this is the kind of lovely vegetation that they have here. I enjoy the BC coast and the San Juan Island. I love the vegetation. I love the mountains. I love the waters. I love the waterfalls. And of course, we also see lots of sea life as well. You have these kind of lovely trees. One of my favorites is this tree. This is the arbutus tree, and these are very characteristic of the San Juan and the Gulf Islands and the lower BC mainland. They have a very nice red or orange red bark, and they stand out quite regularly. When we were over in Susha Island, we were at anchor there, and this boat we saw, it was drifting. Nobody was on board. We thought, hey, that boat's moving. It doesn't have an anchor down. What's happening? And so we launched our dinghy and went over, and sure enough, there was nobody on board, and it was drifting. So we brought it over and we tied it off the stern of the Leda. And sure enough, later in the day, some guys came over and said, "Oh, what happened to our boat? Thank you very much." And so this is just, one of the things that sailors are very careful about each other. And what we help with one person, we put it on, and they help somebody else. And this is just part of the camaraderie of sailing. But this is the Susha Island and Fossil Bay. And again, we enjoyed this kind of interesting convolution of the, what is it, Judy? Is it not limestone, is it?
If it's fossils, it's probably limestone.
Yeah.
But I really don't remember.
That's probably why they call it Fossil Bay.
Could be sandstone.
Yeah, that's probable. Now, the other interesting thing that they have on Susha and a couple of other islands is that they have facilities, not only buoys that are available, but for example, this little bit of a pontoon here is a pump out station. And you can go alongside and pump out your boat there. And the pump outs in the States are free of charge. In Canada, they tend to have a charge for them. But we found that the American pump out facilities are basically free of charge. So boats can go along there and hook up and pump out their holding tanks. The other interesting thing they have are these, what they call trot lines, where you can tie up to the trot lines, launch your dinghy, and then go ashore from that. It's for some boats, it's a bit more secure than being on a mooring buoy or being at your own anchor. But there are good facilities that way in many of these islands. They also have mooring barges like this, a pontoon that you can hook up. So here you could have, 4 or 5 boats that are secured alongside that pontoon. You still need to have a dinghy to go ashore, but the pontoons are available, and some of them even have picnic tables on them as well. But this is just the nice countryside of the San Juan Islands. The interesting thing you see with our dinghy, we have an extension handle on our motor, our outboard, so that if only one of us is in the outboard, they can be sitting up in the central area rather than back aft, and that allows that boat to go along on a plane far more readily. Again, these beautiful arbutus trees that they have in that part of the world. Then we went over to a place called Protection Island. Again, this is part of the Gulf of the San Juan Island. And it's a protection island. You're not allowed to land there. And the birds seem to know it. So they jauntily stand on their the different signs there saying, "Aha, you can't touch me." And they also, it's a rookery. And here we have the tufted puffins playing around. And this is what the rhinoceros gillroot.
Rhinoceros, now I can't remember.
Yeah, I think it's the rhinoceros auklet. That's what it is. My wife's more into the birding than I am, but we enjoy looking at the sea life and the bird life. And of course, there were the ever-present seals that were always around. Now, the interesting thing about these are the San Juan Islands down here, and they are now all American. But in mid-1800s, the border was just being established. In fact, in 1846, the treaty was finally settled at the 49th parallel. So this 49th parallel came across from Lake Superior straight across, and then they simply said it goes down the middle of the channel and out to San Juan. They did not specify exactly where it went. At that point in time, or just before that, the American position was that it should be 5440 or bust. And that would have meant that the Canadian border would have gone from approximately Hudson's Bay over to Prince Rupert, or the southern tip of the Alaskan Panhandle. And President Polk at the time believed very strongly in manifest destiny, and that America was to take over all of North America. However, the treaty arrangements said no, the Oregon Territory, this is going to be the border. And the Americans were so relatively unhappy with that they said, okay, and this is why the border goes straight across and cuts off Point Roberts at the southern tip of this peninsula. They wouldn't go around it to allow the border. So that's why Point Roberts is down here at this particular point. But the problem was, where does this go after that? And they didn't initially understand all of these islands that were in the way. And at that point in time, the Hudson's Bay Company was in Fort Victoria, and of course Vancouver was being populated by the British at that point in time as well. And the Hudson's Bay Company established on San Juan Island, this is San Juan Island here, the Hudson's Bay Company established a sheep farm in, I guess it was 1853. They settled it, some sheep farmers there, and I don't know, I had maybe anywhere from 50 to 100 people operating that sheep farm. Then a few Americans came in and settled on the southern part of it. I think there were 18 Americans at that point in time. And at one point in time, I guess it was by 1859, there was a pig that went from the Hudson's Bay Company farm onto an American farm and was wiping through the American farm area. And the American farmer was very incensed and shot the pig, and probably had a very good pig roast after that. but the Hudson's Bay people were incensed at that. And they then, Lyman Cutler was the name of the American who did this. And they wanted to exile him from San Juan Island. And the Americans objected to this. And so they went down to Oregon and said, you got to help and protect us. So the Americans then sent a contingent of about 100 people there. And then the British brought in a squadron of ships and the equivalent number of Marines on the ships. And that was the beginning of what was called the Pig War. And so this conflict was started between the British and the Americans over this pig who was shot by an American, and the British were very incensed by it. By 1860, there were even more Americans coming in, and it turned out to be a real standoff between the Americans and the British at this point in time. And so this was the beginning of the Pig War, and they finally came to an agreement that the British were able to have their area in the north, and the Americans were in the south, and there was a stalemate until the border going through or around the San Juan Islands could be settled. And so this is a picture of the American encampment. And this is the way in which the American settlement was set up. But the British settlement was far more civilized in the very British tradition. And the Americans actually enjoyed coming up and enjoying dances and the socialization of the more, quote, civilized British at the time. And so that situation stayed there, a détente between the two forces, the Americans in the south, the British in the north, until about 1872, when Kaiser Wilhelm finally awarded the jurisdiction as to where the border would go. And the decision, the British wanted the border to go down this way, the Rosario Strait, but the Americans wanted to go this way through the Haro Strait. And Kaiser Wilhelm in 1872 then said, okay, it will go this way. And so that's where the border is today. And on San Juan Islands are all Americans as a result of that. Now this is Friday Harbor in San Juan Islands. And it's a very busy touristy harbor during the summertime. They have a very good jazz festival there and lots of other features. Judy and I enjoy harbors that are more isolated. We like isolated anchorages, but we did spend some time there in Friday Harbor. Now we're going from here over to the Gulf Islands on the Canadian side of things. And we made our start at Sydney. This is the Sydney Spit. It goes, I think 2 or 3 kilometers out into the water and is submerged at high tide, most of it. And Sydney Spit is part of a national park. There are mooring buoys in this area, or you can anchor over here. This is the windward side, so very few boats there's anchor on this particular side. And there is a large dock here that people can go alongside. There's a small fee for it, but there's a good kiosk and a lot of information about the Sydney Spit Park. And so this is the dock that they have there. And you come in here and there are kiosks and information. They even have large wheelbarrow, so that you can put your gear in the wheelbarrow and wheel it up the beach to have your beach holiday and fun. This is the end of the spit at low tide. You can see how the spit meanders out there at low tide. And they have very good trails inside of it, including areas for setting up tents. And the arbutus tree that I like very much. And here the group is getting ready to set their picnic up, and here is the kind of wheelbarrow that's available to be able to ferry your stuff across this bit. Now this is up in Active Pass, and Active Pass separates Galliano and Main Island. It's called Active because of an American Coast Guard vessel, USS Active, that did some of the initial survey work there in the 1850s. And there is quite a bit of current going through Active Pass. It's actually wide enough because two ferries can go across there at one point in time. But sailboats have to, of course, give way, and you've got to make sure that you're not going to be in their way when you're going through Active Pass. And from there we went to Montague Harbor, which is on the southwest coast of the Galliano. And it has a lovely Montague Harbor Marine Provincial Park there with good information and tours and lovely beach areas. We then went up to Pender Island, and there are actually two islands, North and South Pender. And there is this very narrow entrance between them, going under this bridge between North and South Pender. When I was in the Navy, I did the silly ass thing of seeing if we could take a patrol vessel, an 80-foot patrol vessel, through and underneath there. I'd heard of a couple of people who tried it earlier, and apparently one of them had knocked off one of their antennae and got sacked. And well, we should be able to do it. And so we actually measured the height there. We checked and we went through at low slack water, so we would have the height to go under this bridge. And so we took an 85-foot patrol vessel between these two islands. I think it was the last time it was done, but at least I had the reputation of having done so. But also these islands in the Gulf Islands are very good and high residential residency areas. $1-million homes on these islands. And all these islands are served by the BC ferries. And there are actually some people who live on the islands and still work over in BC using the ferries every day to go back and forth. So this is part of one of the beaches there, and a lot of kayaking and ecotourism go on. Now this is coming up to Salt Spring Island, and this is the area called Ganges, and this is a nice long reach coming in here, and you can anchor in here. You can anchor out here too, but that's a fairly busy transit way, and there are also a lot of good marinas right here in town that you can do. Salt Spring Island is a very well built up island. A lot of people live there year round, of course. And as I say, they've got ferry service. One of the other areas of Salt Spring that we want to visit, this is actually still Ganges, and they have a lot of air traffic coming in and over there as well. They also have a very good farmers market every Saturday there. So Ganges is a very good location to resupply. This is Fulford Harbor, also on Salt Spring, a nice, quiet little local community. So if you want a quiet, hippie-type life, Fulford Harbor is a very good location for it. Now this is another on the mainland. This is a place called Mamance. No, not Mamance. No, it's oh, I'm having a senior's moment here. But anyway, it has a large lumbering facility. Chemainus. Okay. And so this is a small marina here, and you need to make reservations during the summertime to get in there. But it's also served by a ferry. So here's the aerial view of it. So this is the small marina here, and the ferry comes in here, and this is the major lumbering area. But the main claim to fame that Chemainus has is the wall murals it's famous for. So that there are 45 of these murals around town. And they depict life at earlier stages and different parts of the history of Chemainus. So these are all murals that are posted around there. And they advocate their heritage, their First Nations heritage, the lumbering industry, and also the Chinese contributions to the area as well. And so this is the Chinese contribution for the workers that they had in the area. They have these footprints on the pavement so that you can wander around the town and see the specific murals that are on the walls. And this is a statement about a Chinese store that was operational there. And this was the store that was serving the area and the Chinese residents at that point in time. I don't think there's many Chinese residents there, but there were several Japanese residents that came to the area. And this was one of the scout leaders of Japanese community. I like this. This is a bed and breakfast, and I love the schooner that they have as its mural. Now, we went on there to a place called Tumbo Island, and this is off Saturno. And again, many of these islands will have mooring buoys that you can use, or lots of anchorages that you can anchor in. We prefer anchoring. We like the isolation. But this is Tumbo Island. It was an interesting island that had a lumber mill at one point in time, and then it closed down and was taken over by a hippie community in the 1950s, and has since been also abandoned. But you can see the remains of one of the winches of the lumbering industry. And here are a few of the shacks that are still there that were used by the hippie communities and earlier by the lumber industry. And we're now going up to Nanaimo, and this is the main bay in Nanaimo. Again, this is on, it's just off, it's on the mainland, just off Gabriola.
It's on Vancouver Island.
Yeah, that's on Vancouver Island, it should be, just off Gabriola Island. And this is one of the parks that's looking over the town of the city of Nanaimo. Looking at one of the vessels going down the channel from it. And they even have a Canadian patrol vessel called the Nanaimo. This is HMCS Nanaimo, which we saw while we were there. From there, we went to a place called Drumbig Provincial Park. A lovely, lovely islet park that goes through beautiful countryside. This is a channel going between one of the islands. You've got to watch, and you preferably go through these channels at slack water. There's usually quite sufficient depth, but you don't want to be swept by the current. We're going up now to another interesting town called Hornby Island. And this is the floating dock that they had at Hornby Island in the morning mist one day. And this was like a nice community beach that they have. Hornby Island is one of the northern of the Gulf Islands. In fact, I'm not sure if it's theoretically if it's still part of the Gulf Islands. It's so far north. But it is a nice, small, rural island. Living on these islands in British Columbia is a very nice, laid-back way of life. But also the cost of living there is going sky high, and real estate is quite expensive there. Now, we went from there back over to Vancouver. And our favorite spot in Vancouver, in Vancouver, was this area called False Creek. And in False Creek, you could anchor in here, you needed to have a permit that you could get. Was there any charge for that
No,
permit?
no.
I don't think so, but the permit would be good for a couple of weeks. Actually, there were people there that lived there months or years
Well,
on end.
They're not supposed to, which is why there's the permit.
Yes, but it's right in downtown Vancouver. And so you can anchor here and you can take your dinghy and dinghy over to several different docks and have a chance to be right in central Vancouver. So here's Valeda at anchor at the far end of False Creek, right around all the central Vancouver high rises. And they make good use of their waterfront in Vancouver. I admire Vancouver very much for that. I wish they had done a similar good job in Toronto. But Vancouver did a very good job of their shoreline. And over in this area, they have a large, what do they call those canoes?
Dragon boats.
Dragon boats. And they have a large dragon boat festival every year. And people come down to practice and crew on dragon boats. This is the Science Center over here. And over on this side, there is one of the large convention centers. But as I say, we're right downtown Vancouver. Also, they have a lot of floating homes. These are floating homes on False Bay. And you can see how people are have their boats right next door. I think that would be beautiful to have a floating home and go back and forth by a boat, or they also, because they are docked on shore, they can have their docks and their cars on shore as well. And this is one of the silos areas, because False Creek is still an industrial area. And so this industry is still very active. And these are the small water taxis that they have going around through False Creek. So you can get on at one area and go up to another area on these water taxis. And this is, what is the name of that market that they have there?
Granville Market.
Yeah, this is right beside Granville Market. And again, downtown Vancouver. Now from there we went to the next area called Howe Sound. And this is going up into Howe Sound. And here we have a tug towing a large barge of lumber. And you've got to watch, because quite often you wouldn't associate these two as being together. And you try sailing across between them, and you're going to go across their tow line. So that could be a very dangerous situation. So you've got to be aware of those. But Howe Sound is a very large sound, and there are several islands going up into Howe Sound. So this is where that last picture was taken, the boat in here. And this is, what is that one?
That's Bowen.
That's Bowen Island. And we have some friends that live on Bowen Island, and there are many people from Bowen Island that take a ferry back and forth and work in downtown Vancouver. And we went up to this island as well, because right here is where they were going to be sinking a artificial reef. And they were going to sink HMCS Annapolis as an artificial reef on that particular island. Unfortunately, and this is a British Columbia Artificial Reef Society endeavor. And so they had this ship already cleaned up and ready to be sunk, but the locals on the island said, oh, well, we don't want all these tourists coming here, one of those NIMBY type situations. So that ship was left there in that condition for several years. And of course, being an ex-Navy person, I was very interested in about it. And so I actually had a chance to go on board. And so I wandered through this ship that was stripped down so that when it was sunk, it was not going to be any kind of a pollution problem. And it would be open for divers to have a chance to wander through with their scuba gear. And so I had the opportunity of touring through this ship with one of the locals who was in charge of it. Now this is the helicopter hangar that they used. You can see here, this is where they would drag the helicopter back into the hangar. This is part of the engine room. Again, engine room area. So this would be available to divers to go through. And while we're there, I had a group of friends who were retired Navy officers, and this chap brought his wife along. And so here we are on the stern deck of HMCS Annapolis on a nice sunny day. Vallejo is back here in the background at anchor, and there is a youth hostel resort back at the end of this particular channel. The objection to it has been overrun, and HMCS Annapolis has now been sunk in one of the bays of that island and is now serving as an artificial reef. I wish I were back up there now. I'd love to do nothing better than to have a chance to dive on it. So that is our story about the San Juan Islands and the Gulf Islands and our little trip up to Vancouver. I hope you have enjoyed it, and Judy and I are happy to have the opportunity to answer questions afterwards. Incidentally, this is us on our boat. These decals along the mast are all the different countries over in Canada and in Europe that we have visited. On the far side are the countries in the Caribbean and the Bahamas and the west coast of Central America that we have. And you can see again, this is our bimini that we made, and this is the area that we allow it to collect water. And we have these hoses down here so we can collect rainwater at any time. We also have a full enclosure that goes right around with both clear vinyl and netting. Unfortunately, when we brought the boat up to Puerto Penasco, we had to dismantle this bimini, and so that when we bring it back up to Chicago and bring it back to the North Channel, we'll be constructing another bimini. But as I said, the boat itself, if anyone is interested, is available, and we'd be prepared to sell it where it is down in Puerto Penasco in Mexico. So if anyone wants information either about the boat or about anything we've talked about today, you're welcome to contact me at this Hotmail address. It's SV for sailing vessel, Valeda 4, Valeda IV at hotmail.com. And if you're interested in seeing a bit more about our boat or interested in its sale, this website, www.valedaiv.ca, has the inventory and a few more pictures of Valeda. So that is our trip, and this is our beautiful treat that we like, and we enjoyed sharing this with you, and we're prepared now to answer any questions that you might have. Over to you, Maureen. Hello there, Maureen, are you there?
Yes, sorry about that. I had to unmute myself. Classic. Yeah, let me just double check here. If you want to, please add your questions to the Q&A box for us. Nicole says, thank you so much for sharing your experiences. Vincent says, nice flags. Rob says, thanks very much. Very interesting and informative. Rob Lesage, I don't know if you know him.
Incidentally, speaking of informative, we use the Wagoner's Guide as our main sailing guide through this part of the world.
Yeah, it seems like we don't have any questions coming in. We'll just give it another minute if anybody wants to pop a question in the Q&A.
As I said, the guides that we used were the Wagoner's Guide, and our GPS system that we had has all the tidal and current factors there, because we need to be aware of the tides. There's still, what were the tides there, Judy? About, they weren't that great. They were about 10, 12 feet.
Yeah, about that.
And so you have to take the tides into consideration wherever you're anchoring. So that we've got a very good anchoring system. We've got the claw. We've got a 45-pound claw as our main anchor, and we've got 100 feet of chain and another 150 feet of road. So that we enjoy anchoring a lot. We like sailing in isolation. We like being by ourselves, the only boat in the whole anchorage. That's the way we enjoy our sailing style. And
Okay.
other people not.
Sorry, Aubrey. We have a few questions coming in, so we'll start with Timothy. What year did you cruise the Gulf Islands?
That was in about what, 2015?
No.
Oh,
Yeah. That was about 2011 or 12.
yeah, because I guess we had our boat shipped across in 2010.
I think so.
So,
So it might have been 2010.
Okay. Dave asks, what was your most favorite place in the Gulf Islands?
our favorite
Favorite place in the Gulf Islands?
spot? Oh, probably be the Salt Spring Islands.
Salt Spring. Yeah, Ganges.
Okay.
There was everything there. It was a bit crowded as an anchorage, but they had great groceries and chandleries and anything you needed you could actually get.
Did they have a bus service on Salt Spring?
I don't remember.
I don't remember.
I don't think I took it if it was.
But it was a very hospitable island, and we liked it very much.
Okay. John asks, is there a recommended time of year for this trip?
Summer. It's generally summer. The winds tend to be fairly light in the summer. So you may find you're doing more motoring, but let's face it, that's the reality of if you ever have a destination in mind, the wind will come from the wrong direction to get there. It's just a rule.
But one of the nice things about both the Gulf and the San Juan Islands are all so close to each other that you're able to get there in a few hours from one place to the next. But you do need to be aware of what the predominant wind factors are going to be. We did a lot of motoring. Like in that, we probably motored 85 to 90% of the time. It was that amount of motoring to go around those islands. So that, in fact, people that had maybe trawlers would have a better time in sailboats. But those are different preference factors that people have.
Okay, question from Jay Johnson. What sort of sailing are you able to do without Veleda?
Well, right now we're not doing any. We did have a Grampian 30 that we bought up here, but we sold it when we were getting ready to bring Veleda back, because the thought was that last March, just like 11 months ago, we said, okay, we're going to ship the boat back from Mexico to the North Channel. So we'll ship Veleda back. So we'll sell the Grampian. And at the end of March, the beginning of March, we left Veleda in Mexico, ready for shipping, and said to the gentleman at the boat yard, and probably mid-April, we'd like you to ship her.
Yeah,
and we
mid-April
came back
last year.
Mid-April of 2020. We came back, and then COVID happened. So we're still waiting. So we aren't really doing any sailing. Aubrey, we've been able to go out a bit on the boat that we sold with its new owner, but again, because of COVID, nobody's doing much of anything.
So that's why if we bring Veleda up here, we will enjoy it for the rest of our lives, sailing around the North Channel with it. On the other hand, it's expensive to ship Veleda from northern Mexico to Chicago. And so if we could sell it in Mexico, we would be happy to do so, saving that amount of money. And then we'd buy ourselves another boat up here in the next year or so. But Veleda's on the hard in a good sheltered boat yard in Mexico. And it's all set up to be just put on a transport truck and shipped up here. Or if somebody wants to buy it, it could be put back in the water and sailed in Mexico and the Sea of Cortez and that part of the world.
Okay, question from Timothy. What bay was the USS Annapolis sunk?
I don't know. It's been only, I think about 3 years ago, 2017, 2018 was when she was sunk in the Howe Sound bays.
We're not sure. We don't remember precisely which bay.
Okay,
There are a couple of other boats that are sunk as well for artificial reefs. One is up by that channel on
I don't
North
remember.
Vancouver Island. There are two or three of them that are now sunk as wrecks for
Yeah.
divers, and the British Columbia Reef Artificial Reef Association has done a good job in setting those up for scuba divers.
Heather says it was sunk at Gambier Island.
Okay, it was Gambier, but we can't remember precisely which bay.
Okay,
Yeah,
Thank
the
you.
bay in which it was stored, the people there were objecting to it, and they held it up for several years.
okay. Question, first a comment from Chris and then a question. Glad to have watched. My first time going virtual, Chris and Elizabeth. The question is, what was the average tidal change? Was there a lot of strange eddies?
Going through some of the passes, definitely. As Aubrey said, Active Pass was named after the U.S. Coast Guard vessel Active, but for years, I thought it was because of the water, because of the currents there. I thought that that's why it was called Active Pass. There's a lot of tidal action in the passes. At this point, I truly can't remember the tide height. It wasn't we're not talking 30-foot tides, but there's quite a bit of current, and especially as you go north up the coast, north of this area, into some of the areas where there are large sounds with very narrow entries, the current flow through them can be quite dramatic, and entry is only at slack water. In some cases, you've got like a 5-minute window. So people don't go through those very often, but there's a fair bit of current activity in the narrow spots.
Yeah.
If you're out in open water, it's not that significant.
That's why you generally want to go through any of these passes at slack water. So you should have a good almanac or a good GPS that will let you know the tidal and current factors.
Okay, this is probably our last question. We're getting close to the end here. What were 3 of your favorite, more remote anchorages in the Gulf Islands?
Favorite remote anchorages in the Gulf Islands. Tumbo was one of them. It was very nice. This is a bit tricky in part because it's now, like
5 years.
7 years ago, which makes it rather challenging. And because we like isolation, we tended to like the bits further north even more because they were more isolated. Montague Harbor was very nice, and Sydney Spit.
Yeah, but they
tended to be more crowded because that's the area where people live, so there are more boats there.
Incidentally, we left our boat for the winter when we came back home. We left the boat on Thetis Island, just off of Chemainus, and there were some very nice anchorages.
Yeah, that was a nice spot too.
Yeah,
it's further north. It's not really the Gulf Islands.
Okay, we have a person here, Chris Hansen, who says a quick hi from Grooven.
Thank you.
Yes,
Thanks,
we
Chris
know
and
Chris
Elizabeth.
quite well. We sailed with him before. Thanks, Chris.
And many are still weighing in on the location of where this boat sunk. There's a lot of different comments, so I guess that still remains an unanswered mystery
Well, it's unanswered by us anyway.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and we're,
yeah.
we're happy to have people send us an email asking questions about any of this as well. And I'm also happy to send them some of my logs that we've
Yeah.
written. So send it to us
Yeah.
at the svveledaib@hotmail.com, and that'll get to us and we'll be glad to respond.
But if the question is, where was the Annapolis sunk, we don't know.
It's one of the bays on Gambia.
Okay. Well, thank you, Aubrey and Judy, for the presentation.
Thank you.
Okay.
We're beyond tomorrow. We're doing another one tomorrow, and that's going to be on Haida Gwaii and the west coast of Vancouver Island. So we hope that some of you will have the chance to share that with us tomorrow.
Wonderful. Thank you for joining us today. We are interested in your feedback, either on this seminar or if you have ideas on topics that you would like us to cover in the future. Simply click on the Evaluate tab located just above the seminar description and complete the form. After the show, all attendees will also receive a post-show survey. Be sure to check out all of the features at the Vancouver International Boat Show virtual. If you have a question, check out the info booth. And we also want to thank our sponsor, Freedom Marine International Yacht Sales. Have a great time at the boat show. Thanks all.